Picture it. A street in Jerusalem, the morning after Passover preparations, the air already too warm for the hour. Dust hangs in the light like flour shaken from a cloth. A man is walking with two boys beside him, one on each side, the older one almost as tall as his father now, the younger one still small enough to reach up and touch his father's sleeve when the crowd gets thick. His name is Simon. He has come a long way for this week, from Cyrene, across water, across desert, across more days of road than he wants to count. He is a farmer. His hands know the weight of a hoe, the temper of an ox, the patience of waiting on rain. They do not know the city. They do not know this noise. He is here for Passover, and for bread, and for the small, holy things a man does when he wants his sons to remember that they belong to something older than themselves. That is the entire shape of his day. Buy bread. Find the lodging again before dark. Keep his head down. Then, from somewhere ahead, a sound rises that does not belong to a market. A different sound. The sound of a crowd that has tasted something violent and cannot stop swallowing it. Drums of feet. A whip cracking on stone. The hoarse, broken laughter of men who have decided to enjoy what they are about to do. Simon does what any father does. He puts one hand on Alexander's shoulder. He pulls Rufus a half-step closer. He tries to drift sideways, toward a wall, toward anywhere quieter. The crowd does not let him. The crowd has its own current now, and he is in it, and it is pulling him toward the road where the soldiers are coming through. He sees the crossbeam first, then the man under it, then the blood on the stones, fresh enough to still be wet. And then, before he can turn his sons' faces away, a Roman soldier breaks from the line, scanning the crowd the way a man scans a field for a tool he needs. His eyes pass over 100 faces. They stop on Simon's. There is no reason. None that Simon will ever know.
He is the right height, maybe, the right shoulders.
The wrong row. The soldier lifts the butt of his spear and taps it once, almost gently, on Simon's shoulder. Just a tap, the way you might tap a stranger to ask the time. And the whole world narrows. The crowd goes quiet in his ears. The dust stops moving. He can feel his older son's hand tighten on the back of his belt. He can hear his younger son breathing through his mouth. The soldier says one word. Simon does not need to know Latin to understand it. He understands it the way a man understands a stone falling toward his head. And just like that, before he has finished his first thought, before he has even let go of his son's shoulders, his day is no longer his. If you have ever woken up to a phone call that rearranged your whole life in a single sentence, if you have ever been pulled out of an ordinary morning and handed something heavy that someone else built, if you have ever stood there in the middle of your own life and thought, quietly, I did not sign up for this. This story is for you. Not as a lesson, as a letter written for you personally, 2,000 years ago, and just a long time arriving. To understand what happened to Simon on that road, and why his name still travels, while the names of the soldiers who chose him are dust, we have to walk it with him, slowly, from the tap on the shoulder all the way home. Because something is going to be put into his hands today that he will not be able to put down again, even after the wood is gone. If quiet evenings with these stories are something you need right now, stay with us, subscribe. There will be more like this. So picture him again. Simon, a farmer from Cyrene, far from his fields, far from anything he understands. He came for bread. He came for Passover with his boys. He came, in his own quiet way, because he wanted his sons to see Jerusalem with their own eyes once, while he was still strong enough to walk it with them.
He had a plan for the morning.
A small, decent, fatherly plan. And in a single tap of wood on cloth, the plan is gone. He does not yet know the name of the man bleeding on the stones in front of him. He does not yet know that the beam he is about to lift was shaped for shoulders that have already been broken open by a whip. He does not yet know that 2,000 years from now, in a room he cannot imagine, in a language he has never heard, someone will read his name aloud and feel less alone because of him. He only knows what every one of us has known, at least once, in our own quieter way, that the day he was promised is not the day he is going to get, and that the thing now resting against his shoulder was not made for him and was not asked of him, and is not going to wait for him to be ready. Watch the boys now. Not Simon, the boys. Because before the wood is even lifted, before anything else happens, two children are about to see their father become smaller than they have ever seen him. Alexander is the older one, maybe 12, maybe 14, old enough to know what a Roman soldier is, old enough to have already learned, the way every boy in an occupied country learns, that there are people in this world whose word is heavier than your father's word, and that this is the first thing a man has to swallow before he is allowed to be a man. Rufus is smaller, younger, still at the age where his father is the tallest thing in any room, still at the age where, if his father says it will be all right, it is all right, because his father said so. They are standing on either side of him when the soldier's spear taps his shoulder, and they feel it before they understand it. Alexander feels his father's body go still in a way bodies should not go still. The kind of stillness that comes when a man is calculating whether he can refuse, and finding the answer, and accepting it, all in the space of one breath. Rufus feels his father's hand loosen on his shoulder, just slightly. The grip that has held him through every crowded street of this trip, the grip that has been the one fixed point in a city of strangers, eases. Not because Simon wants to let go, because he has to free his hands for something else. And Rufus, who is too young to name what is happening, knows in his body that something is wrong. Children always know. Long before they have the words, they know. The soldier speaks again, sharper this time. Simon turns his head to his sons. He does not say much. There is no speech here. There is no time for a speech, and Simon is not a man of speeches anyway. He looks at Alexander. He gives him one short instruction. Stay with your brother. Hold his hand. Step back to the wall. Wait for me. That is all. He looks at Rufus last, and for half a second his face does something it has not done all week. It softens in a way the boy will remember, decades later, when he himself is a father trying not to let his own children see his fear. And then Simon turns away from his sons and steps out into the road. Alexander does what he was told. He grips his little brother's wrist, hard, harder than he means to, and pulls him backward through the wall of bodies until their shoulders find stone. The wall is warm from the morning sun. Rufus tries to look. Alexander turns his head away by the chin, the way he has seen his father do for him 100 times. But Alexander himself looks. He has to. He cannot help it. He watches his father walk into the middle of the road, in the dust, in the wake of the man with the broken back, and he watches his father bend down. And something happens inside the older boy that has no name yet. It is not fear, exactly. It is not shame, exactly. It is the discovery that the man he loves more than anyone in the world can be made small by other men.
That his father, who can lift a calf out of a ditch with one arm, who can settle an argument in the village by walking into the room, can be tapped on the shoulder by a stranger and made to bend. And there is nothing a son can do about it. If you have ever had to stand still and watch someone you love be handed something you cannot lift for them, if you have ever been the witness instead of the rescuer, if you have ever loved someone you cannot save, you know what Alexander knows in this moment. There is a particular kind of helplessness that only exists when the person suffering is yours, and you are too small, or too far, or too late, or too nothing to step into their place. It is the helplessness of the chair in the hospital hallway, the helplessness of the phone you cannot answer for someone else, the helplessness of standing against a warm wall with your little brother's wrist in your hand. Rufus, against his older brother's grip, twists once and looks. He sees his father's back, broad and familiar, the back he has fallen asleep against on long walks home from the fields. He sees that back bend. He sees the wood come down onto it. And the boy does something small that no one in the crowd notices. He whispers his father's name. Not loud, not a cry, just the word, the way you say a name when you are not sure if the person you are saying it to is still the same person. Simon does not turn around. He cannot. The soldier is already shouting at him to move. And here is the thing about that morning that the Gospels do not say out loud, but that any parent who has read this story slowly can feel pressing up out of the page. Mark, writing it down years later in Rome, names the two boys.
Alexander, Rufus. He names them as if his readers already know them, as if they are men by then, sitting in the same room where the letter is being read,
Which means those two children, pressed against a warm wall on a hot morning in Jerusalem, watching their father carry something that wasn't his, did not forget. They told this story for the rest of their lives. They told it the way you tell the one story that turned out to be the hinge of your whole family. And somewhere in the telling, the helplessness they felt against that wall became something else. But that is later. Right now, it is only this: a father stepping out into the dust, two sons against the stone watching, and nothing they can do but watch. The beam is heavier than it looks. That is the first thing. Simon has lifted heavy things all his life. Sacks of grain that bend a young man double, stones rolled out of a field one by one until his back is a wire, the carcass of a sheep across his shoulders on a long walk home. He knows weight. He has a relationship with weight. But this is something else. This wood is rough cut, green at the heart maybe, still holding sap. The crossbeam alone, the part the condemned man carries, is the weight of a small man laid across your neck, and it has been dragged. It is filthy with the dust of the street, and with something darker that has soaked into the grain and dried there in long, uneven streaks. Simon does not let himself look at the streaks for long. He bends his knees the way a farmer bends his knees to lift, with his back straight, and he gets one shoulder under the beam, and he stands. The wood settles into the meat between his neck and his shoulder, and he feels it. The first splinters go in the way the first splinters always go in, quietly. He does not even notice them yet. They are just a roughness against the skin of his palm, the kind of roughness a man's hand registers and files away as nothing. The beam is what he is paying attention to. The beam and the soldier behind him, and the man in front of him, who is now slowly, painfully, getting back to his feet. The soldier shouts something. Simon takes a step, and then another, and the procession begins to move again. He walks behind a stranger. That is the strange, unbearable shape of it. He is walking behind a man whose name he does not know. A man in a torn robe, stiff with blood. A man whose hair is matted dark against the back of his neck. A man who walks like every step is a small negotiation with his own legs. Simon does not know who he is. He does not know what this man did, or did not do, or said, or refused to say. He only knows that the wood on his own shoulder belongs to that back, that the splinters now beginning to bite into his palm were cut for those hands, that he, Simon of Cyrene, who came to this city for bread, is now walking the last road of a stranger's life, carrying the stranger's wood in the stranger's place. The road climbs. Not steeply, just enough that the beam wants to slide. Just enough that Simon has to keep adjusting it, lifting it slightly with his palms to ease the place where it is grinding into his shoulder. And every time he lifts, the wood bites back, deeper. He notices the splinters now. One in the meat of his right palm, near the thumb. One along the side of his left hand. Small, sharp. The kind a man would pick out at the end of a day's work without even thinking about it. He does not pick them out. He has nowhere to put them. He has nowhere to put anything. He just walks. The dust gets into his sandals, between his toes, into the corners of his eyes. The sun is higher now than it was when the soldier tapped him. The smell of the street is the smell of every city street that has carried a body to its end. Sweat and animal dung, and the iron smell of blood drying in heat, and somewhere underneath it all, faintly, the smell of bread baking in someone's house, because life does not stop just because a man is dying. Ahead of him, on either side of the road, the women have started. He hears them before he sees them. A high, broken sound from one throat and then another, the sound of women who have come out specifically to weep for a man being led to his death because, in this city, in this season, that is what some women do. They cover their heads, they tear at their clothes, they wail in a way that is older than any of them, older than this road, older than Rome. and the man in front of Simon stops, just for a second, long enough that Simon has to plant his feet to keep from walking into the back of him. He does not yet hear what the man says to those women. He is too busy with the beam, too busy with his own breath, too busy with the small, fierce arithmetic of how many more steps until something gives. But he hears the tone. It is not the tone of a man begging. It is not the tone of a man cursing. It is the tone of someone with enough left in him to be tender. And Simon, who has not yet looked at this man's face, files that away too. If you have ever been pulled into the middle of a story that is not yours, if you have ever had to keep walking under a weight that no one around you can see, if you have ever found yourself doing something for a stranger and wondering quietly, in the back of your mind, why this? Why me? Why now? Then you already know what Simon's shoulders know. There is a particular loneliness to carrying what is not yours. People around you cannot quite see it. They see you walking. They see you upright. They do not see the splinter. They do not see the place where the wood is grinding the same patch of skin again and again. They do not see the small private question your body is asking with every step. The procession moves on. The women keep weeping. The dust keeps rising. Simon's palms are warm now, warmer than the rest of his hands, the way skin gets warm when it is starting to bleed in small, unimportant places. He shifts the beam again. He keeps his head down, partly because it is easier to balance that way, partly because he does not yet trust himself to look up at the back of the man he is walking behind. Not yet. He just walks, one step, then another, carrying what was never his. And then the man in front of him falls again, not all the way down. He goes to one knee, the way a man goes down when his legs have stopped agreeing with him, and his hand reaches out and slaps the stones to keep his face from following. The whole procession lurches. The soldier behind Simon curses. Someone up ahead shouts something that gets lost in the wailing of the women. And Simon, with the beam still cutting into his shoulder, has to stop short and step sideways and stand there in the road with this enormous piece of wood pressing him toward the ground, while the man whose wood it is tries to remember how to stand. That is when it happens. The man on his knee turns his head, slowly, like a man who has spent the last hours learning that fast movements cost him something he can no longer pay. He turns his head and he looks up, and he looks past the soldier, and past the dust, and past the wailing women, and he looks at Simon. And Simon, who has been keeping his eyes down on purpose, who has been telling himself that if he just watches the stones, he can get through this, looks back. He cannot help it. The man's face is in front of his face now. There is no looking past it, and what Simon sees in that 1 second is not what he expected. He expected anger. He would have understood anger. A man on the way to his own execution has every right to look at the stranger, walking easier behind him with hatred in his eyes. He expected at least exhaustion, maybe accusation, maybe nothing. The empty stare of someone who has already left. Instead, he sees a face that looks at him the way you look at someone you have been waiting for. There is blood in the man's eyebrow. There is a swelling along his cheekbone, the color of a storm coming. His lip is split, and there is a thin line of dried blood running down through the dust on his chin. His eyes are dark and very tired, and those eyes are looking at Simon as if Simon is not a stranger at all, as if Simon is someone he knows, as if he had been hoping, as he stumbled, that when he looked up he would find exactly this face, on exactly this man, carrying exactly this wood. There is no anger in that look. There is no resentment that Simon's hands are not bleeding the way his are. There is something else, something Simon will not have words for that night when he tries to tell his wife. Something close to gratitude, something close to recognition, something close even to tenderness. The same tone Simon heard a few minutes ago when this man spoke to the women now turned full on him. It lasts maybe 2 heartbeats, maybe 3. The soldier yells again. The man pushes himself back up off the stones with a sound in his throat that Simon will hear in his dreams for the rest of his life. The procession lurches forward. Simon adjusts the beam. The eye contact breaks. But it does not really break, because Simon is going to carry that look the rest of the way up the hill. He is going to carry it longer than he carries the wood. The wood is going to come off his shoulder in a few minutes. The look
is not going anywhere. Here is what the Gospels do not record, and it is one of the loudest silences in all of Scripture. They do not record one word between Simon and Jesus. Not a thank you, not a question, not a name exchanged. Mark gives us Simon's name and his son's names and the city he came from, and then leaves the rest of the road blank. Luke does the same. Matthew does the same. 4 writers, none of them filling in what was said. And the longer you sit with that silence, the more you understand that it is not an oversight. It is the point.
Because some things between two people do not need words to pass from one to the other. Sometimes a look across a few feet of dust does the work that 1,000 sentences could not. Sometimes the only honest response to being seen like that is to keep walking and not try to explain it, even to yourself. If you have ever been looked at, in the worst hour of your life, by someone whose eyes did not flinch, if you have ever felt yourself recognized by a stranger in a way the people closest to you have somehow missed, if you have ever carried something heavy and felt, for 1 second, that someone else in the room knew exactly what you were carrying and did not look away, then you know what just passed between these 2 men on that road. It does not need translation. Your body already knows it. Simon walks. The beam is still on his shoulder. The splinters are still in his palms. The sun is still climbing. Nothing about the outside of this scene has changed, but something inside Simon has. He has been seen by a man whose own back is broken open, whose own face is bleeding, whose own legs are failing, and that man, of all people, looked up at Simon with the kind of attention you give to someone who matters. Not someone in your way, not someone the soldiers grabbed, someone who matters. Simon does not understand it yet. He will not understand it for a long time, maybe not in this life, but he will not be able to unsee it. Years from now, when he is back in his own house, with his own animals, with the sounds of his own village coming through the window at evening, he will be doing some small, ordinary thing, pouring water for an animal, washing his face, lifting something heavy, and that face will come back to him. The blood in the eyebrow, the split lip, the eyes, especially the eyes, and he will stop, mid-motion, and stand very still, and let it pass through him. Right now on the road, he does not stop. He cannot. The soldier is behind him. The hill is ahead of him. The wood is heavy. He keeps walking. But he does not look down at the stones anymore. He looks at the back of the man in front of him now. He looks, and he keeps looking, and he carries. The hill comes up sooner than he expects. One moment he is still climbing, counting steps in his head the way a man counts when he is trying not to think, and the next moment the road has flattened out, and the soldiers are slowing, and the air smells different. Bone smell, old fire, the smell of a place where the ground has been used for this before, and the dirt has not forgotten. The soldier behind Simon barks one short word. He understands the gesture more than the word. Stop. Put it down. Simon plants his feet, bends his knees again, and lets the beam come off his shoulder. It is harder to set down than it was to lift. The wood does not want to leave him. It has been pressed into the meat of his shoulder so long that when it finally lifts away, the skin underneath stays warm and stunned, the way skin does when something heavy has been on it for a long time and is suddenly gone. He lowers the beam to the dust as carefully as a man would lower a sleeping child. He does not know why he is being careful. The beam is about to be used for something no carefulness can soften, but his hands do it anyway. Some instinct in him does not want to drop this thing. The soldiers are already moving. 2 of them step past him as if he is not there, and they pick up the beam from where he set it, and they carry it the last few paces, the way professionals carry a tool they have used too many times. Simon stands in the dust where the beam used to be. He does not know what to do with his hands. They are shaking a little, the small, steady tremor of muscles that have been holding too much for too long, and the splinters in his palms suddenly feel sharper now that there is nothing pressing them in. He looks at his hands, then he looks up. The man he has been walking behind is still standing, just barely. His robe is gone now. They took it somewhere along the way. Simon does not remember when, and his back is the kind of back you do not want to look at and cannot stop looking at. They are leading him the last few steps. They are not gentle, and nobody is shouting for Simon anymore. That is the strange part. Nobody is looking at him. Nobody is giving him an order. The soldier who tapped his shoulder a few hours ago has already moved on to the work that comes next, and Simon is suddenly, completely free to go. He could turn around right now. He could walk back down the hill. He could find Alexander and Rufus against their warm wall and put a hand on each of their heads and lead them away from this place. That is what a sensible man would do. That is what every part of his body, except one, is telling him to do. He does not turn around, not yet. He takes maybe 10 paces back from where the work is starting, and he stops there, and he stands. 10 paces. Far enough that no soldier will think he is interfering. Close enough to see. Close enough to hear. He does not sit. A man does not sit at a moment like this. Not even a tired man. He just stands in the dust with his shaking hands hanging at his sides, and he watches. He watches them lay the beam he carried down on the upright that was already there. He watches them put the man on top of it. He watches the first hammer come up. And here is something the Gospels do not tell you, but that any man who has ever held a hammer knows in his bones. The sound a hammer makes when it strikes iron into wood, with something living between the iron and the wood, is a sound you do not hear with your ears. You hear it in your stomach. You hear it in the back of your teeth. Simon hears it that way. The first strike, the second, the third, and it is the wood, more than anything, that undoes him. The wood, the same wood his shoulder still remembers, the same grain, the same rough cut. He carried that wood. He put his sweat into it. He bled into it, in his own small way, from the splinters in his palms. And now they are using it for what it was always for, and he can feel each strike land somewhere inside his own chest, as if the wood were still on his shoulder, as if some part of him is still under it, as if he is, in some way he cannot explain, still carrying. He wants to look away. He cannot. He has earned by his hands the right to be one of the few people on this hill who stays. If you have ever stood at the edge of something terrible and known you could leave, but found that your feet would not move, if you have ever discovered that the thing you did not choose has become somehow yours, if you have ever been the witness no one asked for and stayed anyway because something in you said you must, then you know what is keeping Simon's feet in the dust right now. There is no name for it. It is not duty. It is not curiosity. It is what happens when you have carried something far enough that you cannot pretend it has nothing to do with you. The man on the wood does not cry out the way the others do. Simon notices that. He has heard in the distance on this same hill the sounds men make when this is being done to them. This man is quieter. His breath comes hard. There is one short, broken sound in his throat at the worst moment. But he does not curse. He does not scream. And once, early in the work, Simon hears him speak, just a few words, low, asking something of someone Simon cannot see, a father maybe, about the soldiers, about forgiveness, about people who do not know what they are doing. Simon does not understand all of it. He just hears the tone. The same tone he heard for the women on the road, the same tone the eyes carried when those eyes met his. Tenderness, even now, even here. Simon stands in the dust with his shaking hands at his sides, and he understands that he has been put down too late. The wood has come off his shoulder. The splinters are still in. The face is still in. The voice, now, is going in too. Whatever is happening on that hill is also happening to him. Quietly, privately, permanently. And after a long time, when there is nothing more for him to do here, when the soldiers have settled into the long waiting that this kind of work becomes, Simon turns. Not because he wants to, because his sons are waiting, because the sun is moving, because a man cannot stand in one place forever, even when something in him would. He turns, and he begins to walk back down the hill. The beam is gone from his shoulder. Everything else he is taking with him. By the time Simon finds his sons against the wall, The sun is low enough to throw long shadows down the street. Alexander has not let go of Rufus's wrist all day. The mark of his grip is still on the smaller boy's skin. They look up at their father, and neither of them speaks. Whatever they were going to ask, they swallow when they see his face. He puts one hand on Alexander's head. He puts the other on Rufus's. He keeps them there a moment longer than he usually would. Then he says, quietly, "Let us go." And they walk. The walk back to the lodging is the longest walk of Simon's life, and the quietest. Rufus keeps looking up at his father's hands as they swing at his sides. He sees the dark places on the palms. He does not ask. He has already learned today that some questions wait. By the time they reach the door, the lamps are already lit inside, and his wife is standing in the doorway, because she has been standing in the doorway for hours, because something in her, some old wifely instrument that does not need words, has told her since midday that her husband is not coming back, the man who left. She sees him at the end of the street. She does not run. She just stands very still in the doorway with one hand against the frame, and she waits for him to reach her. When he does, she does not ask. She steps aside. She lets the boys in first. She lets him in last. She closes the door. Inside, it is warm. There is bread on the table, the bread she went out earlier to buy because he did not come back to buy it. There is water in a basin. There is a small clay lamp burning on the shelf, the kind that throws more shadow than light, the kind that makes a room feel like a held breath. Simon sits down on the bench against the wall. He does not take off his sandals. He does not reach for the bread. He just sits with his hands open on his knees, palms up, the way a man sits when he is too tired to close his hands. His wife sees the splinters first. She sees them the way only a wife sees, across a room, in bad light, in one glance. She comes and kneels in front of him. She takes the basin of water and a clean cloth, and she sets them down beside her on the floor, and she reaches for his right hand. And Simon gently closes his fingers, not against her, just around the splinters. He shakes his head, once. "Not yet," he says. It is the first sentence he has spoken since the door closed. She looks up at his face. She does not argue. She has been married to this man long enough to know the difference between a man refusing help and a man asking, without words, for a little more time. She sets the cloth down. She sits back on her heels. She keeps one of her hands on his knee, lightly, the way you keep a hand on a horse you are not sure of yet. And she waits. The boys are watching from the corner. Alexander has not let go of Rufus, even now, even in their own room. Simon looks at them. He does not know yet how to tell them what he saw. He does not know yet that he never quite will. He only knows that when his hands are clean tomorrow, the splinters will be gone, and he does not want the splinters gone yet. They are the only thing on his body that is still touching the wood. They are the only thing still touching the man. He looks at his wife. He opens his mouth once, closes it, opens it again. "There was a man," he says, and his voice breaks on the word man, and he stops, and she does not push him. He tries again. "There was a man," he says, "and they put his wood on me, and he looked at me, and I cannot tell you yet how he looked at me." She nods, as if that is enough, as if she has understood already that her husband has come home with something inside him that is going to take years to come out, and that her job tonight is not to pull it out faster. Her job tonight is to keep the lamp burning while it settles. She gets up. She brings him bread. She does not ask him to eat it. She just puts it in front of him, the way you put water in front of an animal that has walked too far. And Simon sits in the lamplight, with his hands open on his knees, and his splinters still in, and he understands, slowly, the way understanding comes to a tired man, that the day he was promised this morning is gone, and that the day he got instead is the day he is going to carry for the rest of his life. He does not know yet what is going to come of this. He does not know that years from now, when the story of that road has begun to travel from one small house to another, his sons will be men who carry his name into rooms where the name of Jesus is being spoken with love, and that those rooms will know him. He does not know that an old apostle, writing a letter in a city far from here,
will name his boys as if naming family. He does not know that the splinters his wife will pull out tomorrow, one by one, will be gone from his palms forever, but the face will not be, and the eyes will not be, and the wood will not be. He does not know any of that tonight. Tonight he only knows the bread in front of him, and the warm hand on his knee, and the two boys in the corner, and the strange, unbearable fact that the worst hour of his life has somehow also been the hour in which he was, for the first time, fully seen. He sits in the lamplight. He does not eat yet. He just breathes.
And the splinters, still in, do their quiet work. Now back to the road, to the moment that started all of this. A father walking with two sons through a city street on an ordinary morning. A crowd that did not let him pass. A soldier scanning for a tool he needed. And one tap of wood on cloth, almost gentle, the way you tap a stranger to ask the time. The whole world narrowed in that tap, the dust, the boys, the breath, and then a beam he did not ask for settled into the meat of his shoulder, and a back to walk behind, and a face to meet halfway up a hill. We have walked that road with him now. We know what the tap took from him. We also know what it gave. Sit with that for a moment. The man who was supposed to keep his head down became the only person in the Gospels whose hands touched that wood besides the hands of the one it was made for. The farmer who came for bread became the name two children carried into the early church for the rest of their lives. The stranger who did not want this morning became, by evening, someone Mark and Luke and Matthew thought worth writing down. Not because he was strong, because he was chosen. Maybe tonight you are tired in a way you cannot quite explain to anyone. Maybe you have been carrying something for a long time that you did not ask to carry, and the people around you cannot quite see it, and you have begun to wonder, quietly, why this was put on you. Maybe you have looked at your life recently and not recognized whose it is. Hear this. The thing on your shoulder is not a mistake. It is not the universe being careless. Somewhere on the road in front of you, a man you have not yet looked full in the face is going to turn his head, and his eyes are going to find yours, and you will understand, in 2 heartbeats, that he has known about this wood since before you were born, and that he chose you, and that he has been waiting for you to walk behind him exactly this far. The next time the weight finds your shoulder and the splinters bite your palms, and it will find you, and they will bite, remember Simon, remember the lamplight, remember the hands he would not let his wife clean yet. Remember that the burden he did not choose became the thing that made him known by name forever. Let us pray. Father, thank you for Simon. Thank you for the way you choose people who did not come looking for you. We are tired, and some of us are carrying things we never asked to carry, and we do not always understand why this was put on us. Meet us on the road, turn your face toward us, the way you turned it toward him. And when our hands are full of splinters tonight, sit with us in the lamplight until we are ready. In your name, Amen. I would love to know which moment stayed with you. The tap on the shoulder, the 2 boys against the warm wall, the eyes that met Simon's halfway up the hill, the splinters his wife was not allowed to clean. Tell me down below. I read what comes in here, slowly, the way these stories are meant to be read. And next time, the night before all of this, the garden where Jesus knelt under the olive trees and prayed so hard the sweat on his face came out red. What he asked his Father for, what he was told, and the strange small mercy that came to him there in the dark before the soldiers arrived. Come walk that night with me.